one of the things we wanted to do is take a quick look back at the Ghislaine Maxwell case, because a verdict came in at the end of the year in 2021 last year on the Ghislaine Maxwell case. Interestingly enough, Ghislaine turned 60 years old on Christmas Day. Now, she was accused of recruiting and grooming underage girls for one Jeffrey Epstein, the guy that they say committed suicide while in federal custody after they knew that he was going to supposedly try to commit suicide. And then the guards fell asleep. All the cameras malfunctioned. Nobody knows what happened, but he somehow allegedly hung himself with his trouser pants, even though if you look at the photos of the neck that they say, well, this is his neck, it couldn't more clearly be like a piece of wire that was used to strangulate whoever's neck that was, by the way. And there's so many questions there to look at. You could really take a lot of different positions, and we've done that on this show as to interpretations of the data that we can see. But the jury came back for Ghislaine Maxwell after deliberating for 5 full days. That's a long deliberation, particularly on a case like this. And as we talked about at the end of the year last year, it almost seemed like the prosecution was not putting on its best case, but at least they got the conviction. Maybe they didn't want the conviction, but they got the conviction. That's the same trial that was interrupted by the judge having to go up and be examined in the U.S. Senate because she is being elevated, or at least the Biden administration wants to elevate her from the Southern District of New York to the Second Circuit. That's Judge Allison Nathan, and I thought it was very unusual for them to interrupt the trial, especially such a major trial as that, for several days while she went to Capitol Hill to be questioned for the advise and consent role of the Senate as to whether she should be elevated from district judge to appeals court judge in the Second Circuit. But back to Ghislaine Maxwell, she was convicted. She was convicted of the charges of sex trafficking minors, which is the top charge that she was charged with. It could carry a maximum sentence of up to 40 years in prison. She was convicted of conspiracy to entice a minor to travel to engage in illegal sex acts. That could carry up to 5 years in prison. Conspiracy to transport a minor with the intent to engage in criminal sexual activity. Again, 5 years in prison for that count. Transporting a minor with the intent to engage in criminal sexual activity. She could get 10 years for that count. And conspiracy to commit sex trafficking of minors, for which she could get 5 years. That's a conspiracy as opposed to the actual sex trafficking charge, which had the 40-year potential sentence on it. Sentencing hasn't been set yet, and there's already some question as to whether she'll get a new trial because it's been revealed that one of the jurors apparently, and we don't know this for certain because nobody's seen these jury questionnaires, but one of the jurors has allegedly not revealed his own prior experience with sexual abuse, which he then discussed in the jury room, bringing, in other words, something to the jury's consideration that was outside of the bounds of the evidence at trial. But after a jury verdict like this, I would find it hard to believe that even given something like that, the court would overturn it and grant her a new trial. It may yet happen because this story's taken more turns than one would imagine, and it does seem, you could at least argue, I think, that the government seemed a little bit disinterested in ultimate conviction based on the way that some things have gone, including the prosecutors not really putting on all of the evidence that they had and the judge taking a few days off right smack dab in the middle of the trial to go do something that apparently was more important than the trial, although I don't know that everybody would agree that. By the way, this particular judge, Judge Nathan, was a former White House counsel under Obama, and of course that's how she got elevated up onto the Southern District of New York. So we'll see what ultimately happens. If the conviction sticks and Ghislaine is sentenced to something like 40 years in prison, which is certainly possible, then you would see her in prison probably until she was almost 100 years old. Would potentially be her first opportunity for release, would be after serving 85% of her sentence. So if that's the case, that would mean she's likely going to die in prison, and I guess we'll just have to wait and see if she's if she commits suicide in prison. Well,
one of the people I follow on IG, DC Drano, he said he was shadow banned for the last month for posting about information about her.
There you go. Now shadow banning anybody who talks about Ghislaine Maxwell. Or the Jeffrey Epstein situation, the Jeffrey Epstein suicide, all of the crimes that he committed, all of the people that hung out with him after he was already a convicted pedophile. People like Bill Gates, Bill Clinton flying all over on his plane. All these people hung out with him well after he was already a convicted pedophile. It's unbelievable what the elites get away with in this country. And I hope you can see, folks, I mean, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here a little bit. I mean, can't you see the fact that the media is part and parcel of this? These would be the biggest stories in the world if they involved certain people with certain politics. But because they involve people whose politics is media approved, it fits the controlled narrative that the media wants to push forward, then you're not going to hear anything about it. They're not going to do anything to discredit these people. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.